Let's talk about how to make a complicated shape such as this reverse curve. So what makes it a reverse curve is that you have crown in this direction, where a typical shape would have crown in this direction, but it's actually opposite. It's concave. The center of the panel is sucked down in while still having shape this way. I'll show you how you create such a shape. These are common on cars from the late 30s to the early 50s. A good example would be like a 41 Willys between the fender and the grille where it comes down past the headlight. You'd have a reverse curve such as this, where you have the fender of the car, the nose of the car, but this comes down around past the grille area. Has that reverse. What creates that reverse is the tension in the panel. Normally you would wheel the whole panel up, you'd wheel more in the center, tapering less and less towards the edge. That gives you a bulbous shape, that gives you crown in both directions. When you want to create a reverse such as this, what you want to do is you actually want to avoid the center of the panel. The tension in the center of the panel being shorter than the edges of the panel, that sucks the panel down into a reverse. So let's set up a demonstration here. We have a piece that's 12 by 12. We're going to mark a 2-inch section down the center of this panel that we're going to avoid wheeling. What I like to do is I call that the no-fly zone. We'll mark this out. So the center of this panel, we're not going to wheel. We're going to wheel the edges around it, and we're going to wheel more the further away we get. That'll give it a nice smooth contour. If we wheeled constantly to that line, we wouldn't have a smooth transition. So let's get started by wheeling the edges from the line out, and we'll see how much of a reverse we get in one pass. So we're going to wheel this with a regular tracking pattern, keeping it nice and tight. I started right on that line, working my way across. Depending on the shape you're making, you might want to wheel one side more than the other. We're going to make this panel even side to side. So every time we wheel the one side, we're going to wheel the other side the same amount. Let's do 2 passes on each. So just in a few seconds, we're starting to gain a little bit of crown here, and we're getting a little bit of crown here, a little bit of shape there and there. The center of the panel is just starting to come off on the edges of the roll, and it's touching in the middle. So the reverse is starting. You can see when you lay it here, the roll is not touching in the center. The panel is just starting to suck underneath. Let's put a little bit more tension on the wheel and do a couple more passes. And go back in. That'll be 2 passes on this side. We'll go back and do one more on the other side. You can see that that reverse is starting to suck the panel down in the center. We're starting to get good crown on either side. You can also see that that reverse is starting to get the hollow. Let's do that one more time. Where I'm avoiding right now is the entire center, and we are still avoiding the edges. Avoiding the edges is what creates tension in the stretched zone. This area being stretched, the edges not being stretched, makes the edges shorter than the middle. The tension by the edges being held short, not letting the shape out, forces the panel to create crown. So we're creating crown here and here, and then we're also leaving the center of the panel short. That's what makes it have the reverse. Let's do one more time, in and back out in these zones, and then we're going to make our box a little bit smaller and go from there. As always, you want to make your starts and stops stagger on the line, before the line, after the line. This keeps you from getting that ridge in your panel from constantly stopping at the same spot. The reverse is really starting to come in. Now let's concentrate on making this transition a little bit smoother. We're going to move the no-fly zone in a little further so that this area will then be shorter than this area, which will then be shorter than this area. We'll keep moving it in. The center here is the shortest. We never wheeled from here to here. We have about 6 passes now here, and we'll have more as we taper out. So that no-fly zone is going to keep getting wider and wider and wider. That'll keep this panel having a smoother transition instead of just sharply coming up. So now we're going to keep these edges the same, but how far into the center we go is now going to stop on this mark instead of this mark. We're going to do that on both sides. The no-fly zone is getting wider and wider. So we just did another pass with the no-fly zone getting wider. That helps this transition stay smooth. You can see how much crown we're starting to get on the sides. You can see that reverse is probably about 3/8 of an inch down. Let's do one more time with the no-fly zone in the same location. You have to keep in mind at all times that as this panel starts to get more crown, make sure that your lower wheel still fits. If you start to get too much shape, you're going to have to move up to the next higher crown lower wheel for panel clearance. If you don't have the right wheel for panel clearance, the corners of the die will hit the panel before the center does. That'll leave dig marks in the panel. You never want to have a wheel that's significantly too high of a crown, because then the contact patch is too narrow. It'll leave digs in the tracking marks. But you can't have one that's too flat because the corners will hit before the center hits. So always pick the wheel that fits the panel the best, and as the panel creates more shape, keep changing wheels to a higher crown wheel. The wheel we have right now is still fitting nicely. We're going to move this no-fly zone in one more time. We'll move it in about another 1/2 of an inch. So in less than 5 minutes time, we're really starting to develop this reverse curve. The more we wheel it, the more crown we will gain on these edges. That reverse will continue to suck into the panel. And the better job we do at tapering off the no-fly zone, the smoother this transition will be. If you wanted this to come into a real tight reverse, you would have started out with a very narrow no-fly zone and gone from there. If you want to sharpen up this no-fly zone a little bit and accentuate it, that's another trick we can do with the rubber wheel. Let's try that now. I installed the rubber band on the upper wheel. We picked a crown lower wheel that fits this shape the best. We'll accentuate how deep this goes by using the rubber band. That's going to make the panel form side to side. It's not going to affect our shape or the bowl of our reverse. So for that, we're going to use the panel upside down. Bring the wheel up, moderate tension. We're forming over it. We're not creating stretch. With the panel upside down, I'm going to apply a little bit of hand pressure on either side of the panel. I'm going to wheel through that no-fly zone, upside down. Put a little bit more pressure on the wheel. By doing that, we just drove that center of that reverse down in deeper. We probably gained another 1/4 inch to that reverse by using the rubber wheel, putting the panel upside down. What that did is it formed the panel over the lower die, pushing these down when the panel was flipped, making the reverse deeper. We'll go one more time. Again, hand pressure on both sides of the panel. Not a crazy amount. You can always go back and do it again. Doing so, we will lose a little bit of our front to back shape, but it will drive that reverse in much deeper and very fast. So that's the basic principles on how to make a reverse curve. The most important thing you need to know is to make the panel form a reverse. The center of the panel has to be shorter than the edges. The tension in the center of the panel causes the panel to curve over but suck underneath itself, making that reverse. The more you wheel the edges, the higher crown you'll get on the outside of that reverse.